What's up, everybody? This is Chris here from East Coast PC, and welcome back to the channel. It feels so good to be back making videos again. We've been tied up for the past month or so building this wonderful computer behind us that I named the Dominator. I'm very excited about that we finally got it done. We got all kinds of new exciting content coming up about this computer back here, but that's not what we're here for today. We are here today because we got an exciting leak directly from videocars.com that's talking about AMD's upcoming standard desktop processors will include integrated GPUs, basically like Intel does with all of their standard desktop lineup or mainstream desktop lineup. And that's very exciting, and it can be great for us consumers and also great for AMD to gain market share. We're going to talk about all of that in this video here, but before we get started, if there's anybody who is not subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, comment, do all that good YouTube stuff. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Can't thank you enough. So without further to talk about here, let's get started. Alright guys, so first things first, I want to credit videocars.com for this article, and we will be putting this article up on the screen that I screen captured. We're going to be scrolling down it slowly so that each and every one of y'all can stop if you want to. There's an excellent diagram of the new AM5 platform up there and just some other useful information. But anyway guys, so this article here states that all of AMD's upcoming Ryzen 7000 processors, if that's what they will be called, which will use the Zen 4 core codename Raphael, will include IGPUs on their standard desktop processors. So we'll be actually getting integrated graphics processors with the good processors like the 5950X, the 5900X, and all that good stuff. Whereas right now, if you want what AMD calls a APU, you have to get something like the 5700G, and the processor, the actual CPU in those are not as good because you get less cache, and it's just a different design. And it's very exciting that AMD will be including these iGPUs in the desktop processors. For one, because we are in an extremely constrained graphics card market. Now, by the time these come out, hopefully, I hope and pray things will be better. But nevertheless, anytime we get in a market like this, iGPUs and cheap graphics cards in general, like 1050 Ti, stuff like that, are very, very helpful to somebody trying to complete a computer, even if it's just something to hold them over for a little while. And integrated graphics processors inside of these CPUs are just a win-win for everybody, I feel, because if you were in a situation and you couldn't get your hands on a graphics card, well, say you bought the new 7950X or whatever their Zen 4 flagship will be called, well, then you got an integrated graphics processor to tie you over for a couple of months or however long you got to have it until you can get the graphics card that you actually desire. So that is a very big plus on our part. Now, the other big thing to this is, one reason Intel has so much market share, and what I mean from pre-built computers, when you go into your local Best Buy, if you wanted to go in there, pick your father up a new small desktop for his office or whatever, well, so many of those computers, they don't come with discrete graphics cards because they don't need them. Well, AMD has very few options. They do have their APUs now, but compared to Intel's whole entire mainstream product stack, all the way from the Core i3s to the Core i9s, they all have integrated graphics processors except for the ones with the F on the end of them. Like I have the 9900KF here in this computer right here behind me. And what that means is it's a 9900K with the graphics part disabled. Basically what Intel was doing is when they get defective in manufacturing somehow, something goes wrong with the iGPU, well, then they just call it a 9900KF and they can sell it without the GPU in it. And that did save me about 50 bucks, but if I had to do it all over again, if it's not a whole lot more money, I would definitely get the one with the iGPU in it, especially after what we've experienced for the past year in this extreme graphics card shortage. But anyway, so by AMD offering iGPUs in all of their regular processors, companies like Lenovo and Dell and just all of these system integrators will have another option. And it's like I said, that's just one of the biggest things about how Intel is able to keep so much market share, because so much of the market of desktop computers is filled out by, you know, people just needing an office computer, or something to do some very, very, very light photo editing on, or just to surf the web, or just do all kinds of little stuff, anything anybody does on a desktop PC. There's a whole lot of stuff, obviously excluding gaming and heavy video editing, that do not need a, you know, external GPU or a discrete GPU. A lot of people are fine with a iGPU, and that's where Intel is dominating the market, because when they go to build a computer, besides the options that I just talked about, like the AMD APUs, that's the only AMD option that system integrators have if they just want something simple that they don't have to use a discrete GPU with. So that means Intel is going to probably get about 90 or 95% of that market share. Well, by AMD doing this gives them an opportunity to take a whole lot of market share from Intel if they play it right. And ultimately, what we want as consumers is we want AMD to do great, and we want Intel to do great, and we want AMD to come out and beat Intel by a little bit, and vice versa. And we want them just to be playing, you know, in a fist fight for the top spot, who has the best CPU performance for the best value, because us as consumers are the ones that win in that situation. Now, one other very, very important feature that is also in this diagram is that when the AM5 socket debuts, probably it should debut sometime mid to the end of 2022. I'm leaning more towards the late quarter 3 or quarter 4 of 2022 is when the AM5 socket will debut from AMD, and that should launch beside their Ryzen 7000 processors. Now, these processors that will be featuring the Zen 4 architecture, we have found out that they will not support PCI Express 5. They will only support PCI Express 4.0. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, that's fine. Who needs PCI Express 5.0? And PCI Express 4.0 is definitely okay for now. It's definitely plenty of bandwidth. But one thing that I'm really looking forward to in PCI Express 5.0, and which could have been very, very useful in this brand new computer I just built behind me, I have a 3090 in there. So a 3090 takes just over, in a lot of scenarios, just over half of PCI Express 4.0's bandwidth if you're using 16 lanes. So especially if you're gaming at 1080p, which I don't, I game at 4K, or basically I always game at 4K. I have a 4K monitor. But especially if you are installing a 3090, especially an overclocked 3090, into a PCI Express 3.0 slot, which is the same bandwidth as 8 PCI Express 4.0 lanes, I've seen the 3090s lose as much as 30 frames per second when you're pushing really high frame rates, like 300 or 400 frames per second at 1080p, because, you know, the 3090 just needs a little more bandwidth than what it can get from 16 PCI Express 3.0 lanes. Well, why am I talking about that? Because one thing I wanted to do in my computer is put a capture card in there, okay? And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, so I was planning on originally putting it in the bottom slot down there. Well, the way this distro plate is made, those tubes on the bottom that go in and out of the bottom radiator block that bottom slot. So for example, if the card, which the 3090 doesn't, but future cards will support PCI Express 5.0, if your card and your motherboard supported PCI Express 5.0, then what you could do is you could have your graphics card in the top slot, and then you could also use your second card that's meant for or your second slot that's meant for a second graphics card that always gets 8 lanes, which is half. It splits the top and the next slot down to 8 lanes and 8 lanes. So if everything had PCI Express 5.0, you would get 8 lanes for the graphics card and however many lanes you needed for the capture card, usually 4. But the kicker here is PCI Express 5.0 is doubling the bandwidth of PCI Express 4.0, meaning that if we did have that setup, that I could get the full bandwidth of PCI Express 4.0 by 16 in a by 8 slot in PCI Express 5.0. So basically I could have this configuration if everything supported it like it will in the future without losing any bandwidth. So it is a big deal to support PCI Express 5.0. I wanted to point that out because a lot of people online are saying, oh, well, who needs it? We haven't even saturated PCI Express 4.0 yet, and that is absolutely true. But there are use cases in the future where it could absolutely help us as consumers out. I would have really liked to see AMD support PCI Express 5.0 when they debut the AM5 socket, especially since Intel is going to be supporting it with their Alder Lake and their Raptor Lake and all their future desktop platforms until PCI Express 6.0 comes out. But anyway, that's not what they're doing apparently. They are going to stick with PCI Express 4.0. Hopefully it will keep prices down because it is very, very expensive to make PCI Express 5.0 motherboards. Everything just has to be so much tighter because the bandwidth issues. It's just so hard pushing that much bandwidth through a motherboard without losing too much data. So guys, that just about covers most of everything in this article, at least the important two factors about these processors getting iGPUs, why it's so important for us consumers, and why it's also important for AMD if they want to keep tackling Intel, and also about the PCI Express 5.0. So anyway, guys, thank each and every one of y'all for watching this video. Thanks everybody who's been supporting us. If there's anybody who isn't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, comment, do all that good YouTube stuff, and we will see y'all next time. Thanks again.